Hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Douglas Johnson. I am a yoga teacher at the advanced 500-hour level, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about karma and samskara. Before I get into today's talk though, I do want to thank the community that make these talks possible, and those are my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to become a part of that community and help support this work, please check out the links below and the QR code at the beginning and end of the video. Okay, so karma, samskara. Let's take a look at these yoga vocabulary words. Karma, I think, is the one that's more familiar in the West, right? We have a pop song by the group Radiohead, Karma Police. John Lennon wrote a song, Instant Karma. And we have this idea about karma. And the idea is that there's some sort of universal storehouse of the actions we take. And if we take certain bad actions, then we will have to experience maybe a similar thing or even worse thing because we have bad karma. And if we do good actions, then we can get into heaven and we can be reborn as a billionaire because we did good actions. So this is one very popular understanding of that word karma. It's found both in the East and the West. So there are teachers and things that talk about karma in this way. However, in my experience working with real live teachers and talking about karma, it doesn't come up in the same sort of fantastical way where there's universal scales somewhere and they're keeping track. So, you do something bad and then something bad happens to you. You do something good and something good happens to you. So what is another way of looking at this word karma? What could it mean if it's not this? And I'm not trying to say that that interpretation is completely incorrect, but again, it isn't one that my teachers have emphasized. So the other interpretation is the root of the word karma just basically means action. So taking action. And my understanding is can also include thoughts as well. So we take action. Well, what does that mean? What does that entail? Is there good karma? Is there bad karma? Well, my understanding tradition does recognize there are good deeds, there are bad deeds, and there are sort of neutral deeds. How we decide what is good and bad, I think, is a very interesting idea because, again, some people who follow certain religions will say they know what good and bad is, but having studied philosophy and thought and ethics in depth in university, if you dig into it below the surface at all, you find it's extremely difficult to actually nail down good and bad, right and wrong. So I think it's a much trickier thing than you might at first believe, right? It might seem it's obvious what's good and bad, but in my experience, and actually, again, many of the teachers I study with, they don't talk in such simplistic terms. It's very common in religion to talk that way, and for religious leaders to talk in such black and white terms. But this isn't really about religion, it is about spirituality, and the spiritual teachers I've worked with usually have a much more nuanced and sophisticated understanding of good and bad, right and wrong. So what about the second term, samskara? Well, karma and samskara, they, in a sense, work together. When I take an action or I have a certain thought, then over time, if that is repeated, it begins to create a groove, if you will, an impression in the heart-mind, what we talked about before, the chitta, right, the heart-mind. So if you're not familiar with that term, I did a talk, I don't know, a few months back where we talked a little bit about the heart-mind chitta. So it's an important concept to understand if you're going to understand this. So from this philosophy, from this perspective, we have this heart-mind, and we can make impressions upon it by repeating thoughts or actions, right? And I think this is pretty obvious to most, right? We call them habits. So I do something over and over again. Eventually, I don't even have to think. It just happens on its own. It happens automatically. So these samskaras, these impressions, are made through repeated action. And then interestingly, they tend to then create action. So, for instance, if every night when I come home from work, I say I pop a beer or a bottle of wine and I drink a little alcohol, then I might find at a certain point I don't even think about it, I just automatically do that. And then at a certain point, if I can't do that for some reason, I might find that I have some suffering, right? That I'm upset that I can't do my usual nightly ritual the way that I want to do it. So the impression, the samskara, that was created by karma, repeated action or thought, then begins to generate more actions and thoughts, right? So it's kind of a loop. It's like a circle. And in yoga, what we want to start to do is take away the power from these samskaras, from these impressions, especially the ones that we feel are affecting us negatively. So at least one teacher, and I believe two that I've worked with, didn't paint samskaras as inherently negative. So we have samskaras that are useful, right? Patterns, shortcuts in the mind, like driving. I don't have to think about driving. I don't think about which pedal I'm going to press, right? When you're at that stage of learning to drive, you're really bad at driving. It's only when it becomes automatic that then you start to drive more gracefully and safely. So again, we shouldn't take the word samskara as necessarily inherently bad, but we can have negative samskaras. So let's take a look at an example. So let's say that every time I'm interacting with one of my parents, and perhaps they mention something like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to give me grandchildren? I get upset and I fly into a rage and I say things to them that are unkind and cruel and things I don't ultimately really mean. And then later on I cool down and I then call my parents back and I apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I just got upset. Well, what is happening there? Well, what happens is that pattern gets activated, the samskara gets activated, and it sort of takes us over. It takes over our actions. And we essentially go unconscious and we're just moved by this energy of the samskara. Eckhart Tolle talks about this and he calls it pain body. So his way of sort of branding this idea, and he's mostly talking about negative emotions. As I said, samskaras could also be positive. So he's really focused on just the negative samskaras, but these patterns that arise. And again, patterns can be both good and bad or neutral. And what we'd like to do on the yogic path is to notice the negative patterns and over time replace them with positive patterns. So you can think of good karma as taking actions to overwrite the negative samskaras, right? So what would be an example of this? Yoga practice, right? I go to yoga and I keep practicing my asanas and my other techniques. And hopefully over time, I might find certain desires for unhealthy foods dropping away. I might find that I'm much less reactive in certain emotional circumstances, that I keep my cool. So this is a good example of karma, right? Action. I'm taking action, and I'm hoping to overwrite the negative actions, the negative patterns that would motivate me. So it's interesting because from this perspective, the way we get rid of our negative karma, right? Again, there's this idea of like, oh, if I do something, like it's going to come back to get me in the future. And in a sense, this is true because these patterns lay dormant inside of us. And when they get activated, usually there's going to be a negative consequence that comes up, right? Again, let's take that example with the parents. Well, we might have many triggers that come from our family of origin. And when we're dealing with our romantic partner, we might find that these get triggered because many people, psychiatrists say today that your relationship with your primary caregivers growing up is going to basically affect the way you deal with your romantic partner. So if you had a healthy and loving relationship with your primary caregivers, your parents, then relationships will probably be very easy for you. If you didn't have that, then you might find that you really struggle to maintain or have a healthy relationship. And this is largely because of these samskaras, these patterns that get activated. So in a sense, they are affecting our future, right? If I have a samskara that produces a negative response in me, especially if I'm unaware of it, and usually when we're unaware of it, it means we're identified with it. We justify it. We justify our actions. We justify our feelings. We defend it, right? Of course I'm going to get angry. Of course I'm upset about this and that. You did this. You had no right. This is identification with the samskara, with the pattern. And if we do that, we can never get rid of it. Now again, I'm not saying that every pattern is negative. And I will also say that just because someone criticizes you for something, that doesn't automatically mean that it's a negative pattern. They might be triggered by something that you're doing or saying that may not ultimately be a negative thing, right? This can happen a lot. So we can see how if I can eliminate the patterns that are no longer serving me, in a sense, I'm creating a new future, right? So this idea of negative karma, I'm ameliorating my negative karma. I'm essentially deleting it because those actions I would have taken in the future that caused me suffering, I no longer have to take them. So in my experience, this is the type of karma that my teachers emphasize and talk about. The relationship with samskaras and actions, not so much the idea of karma like I do something and there's a scale somewhere and I made a deposit on that scale, and now until I am punished in a similar way, then the scales will not be evened out. And again, I'm not saying that that interpretation is completely wrong or inaccurate, but I am saying that it's not usually how my teachers have spoken about this concept. So what do you think? I'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts on karma and these patterns, the samskaras, your experience with them. Please leave them in the comments below. And again, if you'd like to help support this work, please check out the links on Patreon. I've got classes, yin and flow. I have meditations. I have music to meditate and practice yoga to. All that stuff is over on Patreon. So I hope you'll check it out and maybe you'll join as a free member or eventually a paid member. If there's any way I can help you, please reach out. Otherwise, until next time, namaste and have a beautiful day.